And good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us as we look back on the progress we've made on behalf of the families of Connecticut. And we are particularly going to be focused on the relief that we have provided to middle-class taxpayers. And we are very excited to provide this holiday cheer as we go into the 2024 new year and 2024 tax year, when all of the things we're going to be talking about today will be seen by the people of Connecticut as they fill out their tax returns. So this year we were very proud to work with our legislative partners to pass the largest tax cut in state history, which had bipartisan support. And we're very proud to announce that we've increased the earned income tax credit from 30.5% to 40%, which will help more than 200,000 filers across the state of Connecticut. We've also permanently lowered the income tax, and we've taken the 5% income tax rate and lowered it to 4.5%. And we have taken the 3% rate and lowered it to 2%, beginning, as I mentioned, in the year 2024. So for the 2024 tax year, taxpayers will see this impact, and the income tax cut that I've just described will help 1.1 million taxpayers, or 63.2% of the taxpayers in Connecticut. So taxpayers may be wondering, well, what does this mean for me? So depending on your gross income, joint filers could see almost $600 in income tax relief, and single filers could see up to $300 in a tax benefit to them. Also, with the passage of the state budget, we were able to expand the existing deductions for certain IRA distributions and pension and annuity earnings to benefit seniors in our state. So approximately 200,000 people will benefit from the most recently enacted exemption. So there's going to be an elimination of the retirement cliff via the exemption phase out, and we're very excited about that relief for seniors. So if you look at the combined savings from the income tax cut that I described, the earned income tax credit, and the expansion of the exemptions for certain pension and annuity earnings for seniors, that is a grand total of $460 million per year in tax relief for Connecticut families. And this is part of our administration's commitment to making our state more affordable for everyone. And it's also part of our commitment to increase and make our state's finances the best they can be. We're very happy that we have a rainy day fund that is very strong with $3.3 billion in it, and that we've paid down $7.3 billion in debt. And I know our treasurer is also going to be talking about how we have increased our bond rating. So we have set the state on a great fiscally responsible path, and we're so pleased that our legislative partners who've been with us at every step of the way are here to celebrate that holiday cheer. And we're going to bring up Senate President Marty Looney and Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and Happy Holidays to everyone as we get very close to that season. We certainly have a lot to celebrate today, and one of which is our continued progression in making our income tax a more progressive one. We have had a 32-year incremental struggle since the passage of the flat rate income tax at 4.5% in 1991. It was an inadequate resolution that year, but it was the only one that we could get the votes for in both chambers to pass, and we've been trying to improve that ever since. First of all, by building in various tiered rates so the people at lower income levels were taxed at lower rates, and then progressing to higher rates and higher levels. So this year, we significantly enhanced the progressivity at the lower end, as the Lieutenant Governor said, by reducing the 5% rate to 4.5%, the 3% rate to 2%. So we have now, I think, really have struck a blow for progressivity for low and moderate income people in Connecticut who do have enough income to be subject to the income tax, but are at the lower rates of taxation. That is critically important. Also, the earned income tax credit that we first passed in 2011, after years of struggle, because Governors Rowland and Rell had always been opposed to it because they thought it was somehow a windfall for people who didn't have income tax liability, ignoring the fact that lower income folks paid lots of other taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, gas taxes, all of the other taxes that, even though their income might not have been high enough to have actual income tax liability. But in 2011, we were able to get that instituted. We were the last state in our region that had a state income tax that did not have a state earned income tax credit, instituted it at 30%. It's went down a couple of times during our battles in the recession years. In fact, during our 2017 budget crisis, one of the options put on the table by some of the Republicans was to suspend the EITC for that biennium altogether, or to reduce it to a number below 20%. That did not happen. It was reduced, I think, to 23% at the time. We were able to get it back up to 30.5%, Governor Lamont's support, and now over 40%, which is, I think, something to be celebrated and something I think we need to continue to commit to sustain. So, again, this has been something that it's an annual struggle or a biennial struggle, but I think we have moved significantly to help lower income working people in this state through the EITC and through greater progressivity at the lower end of the income tax. I'd like to turn it over now to our great Majority Leader, Senator Bob Duff.
Thanks, Senator Looney. Thanks for all your hard work leading us in the legislature as well. And Governor, it's great to see you. You look like you're back at your old press days, taking notes in the audience there. I just want to talk a little bit about what we've done for senior citizens across the state of Connecticut. And I think about my parents, who are now retired themselves, who spent their working lives preparing for retirement and ensuring that they can stay in the state of Connecticut, doing really everything right, putting away money in their savings and retirement, and working to make sure that they had enough for the day that came when they actually retired. My mom was a school secretary for the Norwalk Public Schools for a couple decades. My dad had a regular job, so my mom had a pension, my dad had a 401k, and it's been a long struggle to ensure that we were able to, in our budget, make sure that their pensions and their retirement, their Social Security was not taxed. And for the vast majority of the people of Connecticut, we have a budget now that ensures that they are not taxed and that they can feel they have a little extra breathing room, and that they don't feel pressured because of Social Security taxes or retirement or pension taxes as well. And so therefore, one of the things what that does, what my parents are able to do, is stay in the city of Norwalk, close to my family, my kids, and Tracy and me. But that also is for countless other senior citizens across the state of Connecticut. We all know that trickle-down economics don't work, but trickle-down works for family values and works to keep people in the state of Connecticut. Those trickle down of families that are able to be close together. When my kids needed some help after school, my parents were always there helping them. They were able to come over when one of us was working late and we needed an extra hand. So these kinds of tax cuts that we're talking about today for senior citizens, they help to keep families together. They ensure that what seniors spend in our communities, whether it's for volunteering, whether it's for purchases for their grandkids, whether it's for property taxes on their homes, that they're able to stay here and that money still does go back into the economy. The savings that they have that they otherwise would have paid in taxes, that money is going back into our economy and allows seniors to live a better life than they normally would have had we not taken these important steps today. So Governor Lamont, I know this is important to you, it's important to those of us in the legislature as well, it's important to the Lieutenant Governor and all my colleagues, and so these kinds of steps are very, very important to ensuring that we have seniors who feel that they are staying and they can stay in the state of Connecticut, and we keep those families together as a unit, which is very, very important, I know, to all of us here in the legislature. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Duff, and we'll now bring up House Minority Leader Vin Candelora.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and good morning, I guess, still. You know, government does its best work when it's bipartisan, and we are fortunate in the state of Connecticut to have a governor that recognizes that and brought us into the room in budget negotiations. Republicans in the last decade have only been in the room twice for budget negotiations. The first time was when the guardrails, the fiscal restraints were put into the budget that have led us to have the ability to provide tax relief to the residents. And so I think it's an important part of those reforms to not just help us in government spending and to right-size government, but also to right-size the tax code for the state of Connecticut. And I just am here to applaud the governor in making sure that we were at a point in time last year that we were able to right-size our tax code for the state of Connecticut, and we are fortunate that that was able to be accomplished last session. And I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday, Merry Christmas. I think this is a good day to have a press conference like this going into the new year where people are going to see that tax relief. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now it's my pleasure to bring up State Representative Holly Cheesman.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor. It's great to see everyone here today. It's great to see you, Governor. I will add, I think everyone in this room is feeling very mentally healthy today, so if you were wondering. I'm delighted to be here with all my colleagues from the legislature to applaud this historic achievement, the first tax cut in decades. And as the minority leader said, this is due to a governor, a legislator, that worked together, that recognized as we reap the rewards of those good fiscal guardrails we put in place, that our taxpayers should reap the rewards as well. And I think as importantly, we set up tax cuts that are achievable, affordable, and sustainable. Connecticut taxpayers for too long saw tax breaks taken away when the state hit the economic rocks. So as important, as the minority leader said, as the governor knows, is reaffirming those fiscal guardrails for another 5 years. Because by staying the course, we can assure the Connecticut residents that we are doing everything in our power to create a Connecticut where they can live and retire and stay. And I want to thank everyone up here. This is a great day, and I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Representative Cheesman. And I do want to give a shout out and acknowledge our OPM Secretary, Jeff Beckham, our DRS Commissioner, Mark Boughton. We also have Senator Wong with us, and we have State Representative Tammy Nuccio joining us as well. And we appreciate all of their efforts. And with that, I will introduce our great State Treasurer, Eric Russell.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and good morning, everyone. I think what today really shows is the advantage of operating from a position of fiscal strength. Stabilizing our state's finances has allowed us to prioritize decisions. And it's a result of fully funding our rainy day fund that we have at capacity right now, which puts us in a position to withstand volatility or a downturn in the market. It's the numerous upgrades we've had to our credit rating, which has attracted investors to Connecticut and has allowed us to continue to invest in communities across the state at lower cost to taxpayers. And it's the transformative improvements that we've made to our pension funds. As was mentioned, we've paid additional contributions of nearly $8 billion into our pensions, which has lowered fixed costs for taxpayers, saving hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis for the next 25 plus years, and internal improvements that have allowed us to improve performance. Legislation that we have passed to attract and retain top-tier investment talent and to strengthen our investment advisory council. And we're already seeing the benefits of much of this work, as was recognized this year. Our fiscal 23-year performance was at 8.9%, which is 2 percentage points over our targeted goal. But what I think in context, we were in the top 25 percentile for public pension plans in the country. All of this contributes to our overall fiscal health and being able to look at decisions that we need to prioritize. We are making incredible progress, and I'm really excited about the opportunity ahead. But I think while today we celebrate this renewed fiscal position and strength, I think it's also a commitment to maintaining the culture that's gotten us to this point. And I think as we look at the fact that we can't go back to the sins of our past, where we ignored obligations and passed things down to future generations, or where we were unprepared for an economic downturn, or where we were forced to cut essential services or raise taxes on working families in times of crisis. There's always going to be this need to balance priorities, and I think there's always going to be robust discussion about how to best do that. But at its core, I think what we need to keep focus on is that a strong fiscal foundation should be a landmark of Connecticut culture, just like world-class education, and just like pristine hiking trails and parks, and just like the best pizza in the country, and of course championship basketball. So I have incredible faith in the team here and legislators all across the state to do that, and I'm excited to see our continued success as we shape Connecticut's economic future moving forward. So thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. So we have it all in Connecticut: tax cuts, pizza, and Husky basketball. And now it's my pleasure to bring up our fiscal watchdog, our controller, Sean Scanlon.
So I don't want to be the Debbie Downer at this press conference, but I'm going to be for 1 second. I hope you'll allow me to do that, Governor, because today is a great day, but it's not too long ago that we had some pretty bad days here in this building, and it's been referenced by Senator Looney and Representative Candelora, the 2017 bipartisan budget, and that was a great silver lining in a very bad time here in Connecticut, where companies were leaving the state, people were leaving the state. We had to raise taxes several different times. We had to cut spending. It was a very challenging time, and I remember that because I was here as a state rep, and I was constantly told anytime we had a good idea that we just couldn't afford to do it. And we were sort of in this self-fulfilling prophecy where we just couldn't make progress because of the things that were inhibiting that progress. And so 7 short years later, we're in a very different position here in Connecticut. A lot of that has to do with the work that we did on a bipartisan basis in 2017. A lot of it also has to do with the leadership of our governor, Ned Lamont, who has been preaching these fiscal guardrails and our adherence to them pretty much every single day of his administration. And as a result of that, as Eric just said, as other speakers have said, we are on the precipice of delivering that historic tax cut, which the people of Connecticut in just a few short days will begin to benefit from. But it goes beyond just that tax cut. And what's important for folks to remember is that unless, as Eric just said, unless we stay disciplined to those guardrails and adhere to them going forward, we will not be able to continue to offer that relief to people. And the reason we know that is because it's simple math. And that's what Eric and I do all the time, just simple math, right? So in this fiscal year coming up, we will save $650 million simply because of our excess payments thanks to the volatility cap, which is part of those fiscal guardrails. Those structures have led to 6 consecutive years of balanced budgets, $7.7 billion of pension debt paid off, $3.3 billion in our rainy day fund, and this $450 million tax credit, which, by the way, if you want to look at it in this way, is about $450 million in terms of the cost, a little bit more than that. In 1 year, in this fiscal year alone, that $450 million was saved just on one of our pension funds, the SERS pension fund, in savings alone that was freed up because of those excess payments that we're making. So when people say to me, hey, it's great that these fiscal guardrails are correcting the errors of the past, but we have needs today that we have to meet, we're all aware of that, and we're trying to find the right balance there. But I want to remind people that the fiscal guardrails are actually enabling us to meet more of those needs. Because when I was in the legislature, and in those early dark years, 2015, 2016, when our pension fund in 2016, the SERS pension fund, was valued at 35%, it meant that the debt service that we had to pay to meet that obligation was growing and growing and growing to an unsustainable limit that we just couldn't do anything else. Tomorrow, we will show the Retirement Commission from my office that this year's valuation of that SERS pension fund is 52%. That's the highest it has been since 16 years ago in 2008. And just 6 years ago, it was 35%. We're now at 52%. That is in large part due to the investment strategies and the success that our new treasurer is having, but it really is driven by our fiscal guardrails and the progress we're making. And by paying down debt, we can meet more needs in this moment by doing the right thing on a long-term basis. And so I just will echo what everyone else has already said, which is that today is a great day in Connecticut. We've been having some good days recently. That's because we've been disciplined. We're taking our medicine. We're doing the right thing. And as a result of that, we will continue to see more progress, but we'll also be able to give more relief to the people who need it most out there in Connecticut. The governor deserves a ton of credit for that, and I've been proud to work with him each and every day to continue Connecticut's great fiscal progress towards a better day. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sean. And now I'll bring up our great governor, Ned Lamont.
Well, thanks, everybody. And I know, Sean, you had me nervous with all this Debbie Downer stuff. I mean, it's your birthday. Cheer up, man. Yeah. Come on. And also, I appreciate the kind words from, Vin Candelora. We are much better off when we work together, and we work together on this budget, and I think it's making a real difference for people. As Susan and others described, it's we're not a cheap state, and we're doing everything we can to make life a little more affordable for our folks. This is going to represent, $50 a month, 10% cut for people earning up to $150,000. A bigger benefit for those working families. Thanks to Marty Looney in particular, who's always been a champion on the earned income tax credit. And I want to do everything I can to give people an incentive to work. I want work to pay. At the same time, with the earned income tax credit, we have an increase in the minimum wage kicking in a couple of weeks as well, and make life just a little more supportable in this season. And I often think about the tax cuts as well in terms of our competitive environment. And I think there's some misnomers out there. We're in a much better position than we were before, and what that means for the state. Obviously, when it comes to income tax compared to New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, we're very well positioned. People recognize that. We have tens of thousands of families moving into the state of Connecticut from those states in particular, and what a difference that makes. And I also read some of those grumpy forecasts from Tax Foundation and Yankee. I'd like to say, look at us compared to North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia and a lot of those other states where they tend to, as Marty Looney pointed out, they do have a flat income tax. So at the lower end of the spectrum, for working families, for middle-class families, they often are paying more than they are in Connecticut. We're very competitive. At the upper income level, we do have a progressive tax system and it's different. But that's a point I like to make to businesses when they're thinking about the state of Connecticut, where you come here, we're very competitive with those Sunbelt states as well when it comes to how much you pay. I think overall, I look at our budget, I think you heard, I want to make sure that this is an honest budget, a real budget, so we don't have to go back to those Debbie Downer days that Shaw referenced. And we're able to do that in large part because we adhere to the fiscal guardrails. That means we have the revenues in place. We're not shortchanged. We're making the biggest investments in our history in education and daycare and social services. And as a state, we're not living paycheck to paycheck. As you know, Eric said, we do have well over $3 billion. If there is volatility out there, if there is severe geopolitical risk, and there is, we're better positioned to handle that as a state than we ever have before. And we'll be there to support folks in need who maybe aren't in that same position. And it is risky out there. I could also say the reason our state's in relatively better shape is because we're beginning to get our fixed costs under control. And that's in large part thanks to these two guys standing behind me here. For years, our fixed costs were going like that, and our revenues were going like that, and that's a bad place to be. And at some point, you're crowding out services, crowding out all the things you want to do. We're now bending the curve on those fixed costs, and our revenues are going up. Not as much as we, maybe in the last few years, but we're still in the black. We still have a budget that's in the black for this year and next year. There's a couple of reasons for that. We have a lot more people moving in the state of Connecticut. I've said it a million times. I'll say it a million first. Not more taxes, but more taxpayers. That means our withholding and income taxes are holding up relatively well. And as I said on the fixed costs, it's very important that we bend the curve. We haven't done as much borrowing in this last 4 years as we have in previous years, so our debt service is less than it would have been otherwise. I got to say, large part thanks to the $7.5 billion we put in the pension fund. There we've been able to save taxpayers probably $650 million a year. That bends the curve a little bit. I also want to say to our state employees who work so hard, 5 years ago everybody was talking about reneging on our pensions and health care commitments. We're honoring those commitments, and that's what these investments make. I got to say thanks to Sean and the folks in the Comptroller's office. Some of the pharma benefits, we've been able to bring down those costs. That's making an enormous difference in our fixed costs. Eric just had some good news. I mean, his predecessor and I, we reduced the expected rate of return, so we continued to make real investments in our pension funds. He's outperforming in this last year. And that outperformance means we don't have to increase ADEC to make up the difference. That's our pension contribution. We can hold the line there and even bring that down a little bit. So that's why, I'm proud of where the state is today, especially compared to where we were yesterday. I hope people recognize that. I want to thank the folks over here who have been right on the front lines of making this happen. I'm proud we're able to do it on a bipartisan basis in the state of Connecticut. We don't have as much excess revenue. We're going to have a lean budget going forward this next cycle, but we're going to stay true to our North Star and keep this state moving forward for everybody. With that, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good day.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you so much, Governor. And now we will take on-topic tax and finance questions.
Talk about a lean budget going forward. When you're talking about revisions you are making, are you talking about making sure there's not more money going in, or when you say lean, or are you going to have to make some downward revisions?
I don't think so. I think thanks to these guys, we passed a very strong, bipartisan 2-year budget, and if we keep within what we agreed to 9 months ago, we'll be in good shape for the next year and a half.
So, we shouldn't expect significant policy changes in the coming budget revisions in February?
Well, I got some leaders back here who may have a point of view on that, so let me talk first.
As far as what you're putting forward, that's what I'm asking. As far as what you plan to put forward in February.
I want you to have a few things to look forward to, but to be determined.
I recognize a closed door when I see one.
Well, this is great, but I'm sure people out there are wondering, hey, what are you going to do for me now? Right? What's coming? Are there more tax cuts coming? Are there more revenues coming? Where do we stand? I mean, I think people would like to see even more cuts. So what can you say to me?
And we'll know in February when the governor does his budget address, right?
Well,
Unless anybody else.
Any comments, anybody?
so you're not going to propose any tax cuts? You're not going to, that's it? This is it?
The largest one in history hasn't even gone into next year.
Yeah, like one thing at a time, exactly.
I would like to see a reduction.
Go ahead, Tammy. Thank you. Our friend on TV.
Thank you. Personally, I'd like to see continued pressure on the tax cuts. We need to make Connecticut affordable. And one of the things I've pushed for a while and I'd like to see a reduction of no income tax on any Social Security for our seniors. We lose senior population pretty frequently, and as great as it is to have people coming into the state, that's positive and awesome. I'd really like to keep the people who made the state of Connecticut what it is here. So I'd like to see continued pressure on some tax cuts and a reduction possibly of the sales tax for children's clothes, and I would definitely like to see reduction or elimination of income tax on all senior Social Security benefits.
Can I just say, though, on that, the largest tax cut in the history of the state has not even taken effect yet. So I would urge the people of Connecticut, and I know that this is not always easy, but in just over a week's time, they're going to get the largest tax cut they've ever got in the history of the state of Connecticut, and I would ask us to then reevaluate after that.
I seem to recall some state leader who was advocating for a child tax credit. That wasn't included in the budget. Do you think the legislature should enact a child tax credit?
I think there's always more that we can do to look at making Connecticut more affordable, and there was always more that we will do in that regard. What I'm saying is we're meeting the moment right now between giving historic tax relief, investing in childhood education, investing in healthcare, doing all these things, and paying off more debt than we've ever paid off in the history of Connecticut. Is there more we can do? Yes. Is there more we will do? Yes. But right now, I think today's topic is we've done a lot, we have a lot to celebrate, but a lot more work to do.
I don't know if this is a question for, but it's something that the government said, and we talked about this before, that Connecticut is not an expensive state to live in, right? We're going back to that reputation for that. And this is certainly a step in the direction of giving people a little relief. But how do you balance that with other states? You say, well, Connecticut is still very affordable, you talk about quality of life, and this will help, but it's not going to solve inflation and other things that need to face.
And the question is?
I guess the question is, this will help, but how do you try to improve the state's reputation that this is such an expensive state to be in?
I just answer one thing here, just point out. My experience is when people are talking about high taxes in Connecticut, they're not talking about any tax levied directly by the state. The local property tax is the one that people find the most burdensome. And to that extent, the best way we could address that is to be able to direct more state revenue to municipalities to offset those high property taxes. Now, those property taxes are high both as a percentage of the value of the property and also as a percentage of the income of the owners of the property. So it tends to be regressive on both fronts. So that, I think we need to be more precise when we talk about a high tax state. We're a high property tax state. And I think that's the only tax where we really could be seen to some extent as an outlier.
Right, you've been a big advocate in trying to make the property tax less aggressive and more progressive, right? And
Right.
that's something.
Can I also just mention, Susan, too, that some of the other states, Texas and others that may not have an income tax, actually tax their middle-income families and lower-income families at a much higher rate than in Connecticut, because of the fact of the way their tax structure is with high property taxes, high sales taxes, and other fees that they have. But let's just take a state like South Carolina that people talk about as being low tax. Nobody I know who moves to South Carolina moves there because they're sending their kids to the public schools in South Carolina. Nobody moves down there because they want their potholes fixed faster in those communities. So you get what you pay for, and in Connecticut we talk about a high quality of life that people enjoy here in the state of Connecticut, and that does cost some money. But we know we have world-class beaches, world-class parks, we have world-class schools. We still have work to do on a number of different items. But here in Connecticut, people rave about, when they come from other states, about how great the quality of life is. And yes, it does cost some money, but today we're celebrating the fact that we're putting a little bit more money back into the people's pocket who fund our government.
Bob, can I ask you and Marty and Ben, we saw a bipartisan budget agreement that produced this two-year budget that everybody here is celebrating today. What are the prospects do you see going forward for bipartisan cooperation and agreement and maybe a deal on the budget changes to the second year? I mean, you guys negotiated this two-year budget, so I'm just wondering, what are you sitting here looking ahead to May? Do you think you guys are going to be passing another bipartisan budget plan?
I think it's far too soon to tell. It's easy to be bipartisan when you're cutting taxes. I'll say that, but it's far too early in the process to see where we might be in the spring.
Ben, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I'll just, a lot, like I said in my remarks, a lot of it was driven by the governor that wanted to hear what Republicans had to say, and we aligned a lot of the issues. And I think, our party is certainly always willing to get in the room and have the conversation. And I think it's just going to depend on what we see from the governor's budget, what we see from the Democrats' budgets, what adjustments are going to be made. But, I fully expect that we will continue to be part of that conversation.
A lot of you have talked about the elderly. Maybe Sean or somebody could give us an example. What precisely does this do to help the elderly? Maybe if you give us an example, I don't know, an elderly couple making $60,000 a year. But what precisely is going to happen?
This is your guys' thing. In my finance days, I can answer that.
Yeah, do you want to?
Hey, anybody, yeah.
Holly, you want?
The impact on the elderly that you all talked about.
Yes. So what we did is there was a hard cliff for the pensions, annuities, and IRA income at $50,000 for singles, above which you got no benefit, or $100,000 for joint filers. So we've extended that out. So up to $100,000 for singles. It's no longer a cliff. It steps down, and it goes up to $150,000 for joint filers. It's a more gradual decline in terms of how much benefit you get, but it extends a larger amount of income that people can get that benefit from.
Jeff, let's do a quick, there's a couple tables that are embedded in this release.
Sure.
They look like just take a quick look at them. They look like the same that were in the June 5th release. Have these changed since?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Ho, ho, ho. Merry, merry. Happy, happy holidays to everyone. Thank you all so much for coming.